No one is immune to human cruelty, especially when it comes to our fellow creatures. We will tell you about the most shocking cases where people have mistreated animals, recorded it on camera, and sometimes even exposed children to it. And finally, we will share an absolutely bizarre story of how a person turned their cat into a full-fledged quadcopter. Brandon Evans. A wild case of cruelty occurred in the United States in 2017. Brandon Evans inflicted his puppy Ollie more than 50 stab wounds and then stuffed the poor animal into a suitcase, which he left on one of the central streets of Hollywood. Passers-by were surprised by the bleeding suitcase, but even more so by its contents. People tried to save the puppy. They took him to the vet clinic, where the vets fought for his life. But 2 days later, the puppy died due to severe blood loss. The activists announced a $60,000 reward for catching the culprit. Evans was caught thanks to DNA traces that were left on the suitcase. But the puppy was not the only victim of the killer. During the search in Brandon's apartment, cat paws and rat bodies were found. And on the walls in the bathroom and kitchen there were traces of blood. The room was described as the lair of a real executioner. He pleaded guilty to killing the puppy only after 4 years, taking a plea deal with the court that cleared the offender of 17 other charges related to animal cruelty. Evans originally faced up to 85 years in prison, but was eventually given just 10. Nikolai Kovalev. This case shook all of Belarus, and the animal abuser was demanded to be lynched for what he had done. Nikolai was donated more than 15 cats on the internet, after which he killed them, just because he was in a bad mood. As he explained at the investigation, being an orphan, he felt better if he tortured an animal. Listening to the cries of the kittens, he didn't feel so lonely. Volunteers from Minsk received a complaint from the tenants of a building in Frunzensky district about something strange going on behind the doors of one of the apartments where animal screams were heard. Later, the animal rights activists who responded to the report found a dead cat in the trash and called the law enforcement agencies. After arriving, police officers promptly identified the owner of the dead animal, 22-year-old Minsk resident. As reported by the investigative authorities, in one of the cases, the defendant smashed a kitten against a tree trunk in a forest park in the capital. He also threw the bodies of dead animals from the balcony or just dumped them in trash containers. In addition, the young man filmed his criminal actions on his cell phone camera. What's really bizarre is that there had been attempts to bring the guy to justice. In the autumn of 2020, people who'd given the cats to the accused raised the alarm. The new owner didn't get in touch with them, and it was impossible to find out about the fate of the animals. Applications to the police were written and checks were carried out. Kovalev shrugged his shoulders. The cats simply ran away. The police calmed down and refused to initiate administrative or criminal cases for cruel treatment of animals. According to the conclusion of inpatient forensic psychiatric examination, the young man, at the time of committing his crimes, was aware of the actual nature and public danger of his actions and was capable of controlling them. But kitties and dogs are not the only objects of abuse. The next pervert surprised the German police with his uniqueness. David Lloyd. In Germany, a man was sentenced to a prison term of 2 years and 10 months for killing more than 30 common forest hedgehogs. He caught them and then tortured them to death. Sometimes he would switch over to rabbits. Then he would put the killed animals in plastic bags and deliberately leave them in public places. The criminal was caught thanks to the DNA traces left behind. He had a previous conviction, but he was found completely sane after a psychological examination. In July 2022, the Friedberg court gave him a sentence with a real term of imprisonment. The man tried to appeal it, but without success. Here, the perpetrator at least partially admitted his guilt, unlike our next animal abuser, who made up a sob story. But witnesses didn't allow to deceive the investigation. William Hodge. The police in Florida have apprehended William Hodge, who stole an alligator from Congo River Golf Miniature Golf Park and brutally beat it. The incident took place in the city of Daytona Beach Shores, USA. Holding the alligator by its tail, Hodge first beat the animal against the ground and then tried to throw it onto the roof of a building. At this very moment, the police detained the enthusiastic man. He explained his behavior simply. The alligator had attacked him, but he kept silent as to how the reptile managed to get out of the park by opening the door with a lockpick, and why people saw him rotating the alligator in the air like a sling. But if you think that animal abuse is something that only rare perverts do, We added the following case just to show how cruel most people are. Zoo incident. An incident that resonated with a lot of people around the world. 4 Chinese tourists threw stones at a large panda in a nature reserve in Shaanxi province. The young men wanted the bamboo bear to stop moving and entertain them, although the animal is quite calm by nature. The panda was injured and the tourists got into serious trouble with the law. But it looks like it has become a normal practice in zoos to throw something at animals, yell and force them to be active. For some reason, people believe that a confined animal is obliged to entertain them. What is that if not bullying just for fun? Matthew Maloney. A court in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, sentenced 25-year-old animal abuser Matthew Maloney, nicknamed Mad Matt, who was found guilty of brutally murdering a rodent. The animal tormentor bit off the head of a rat, filming his bizarre massacre on camera and then posting his gag on social media. Matthew Maloney was arrested on January 16, 2016. A cameraman and 2 of the defendant's assistants were also involved in filming. The footage shows Matt quickly walking into a room, swinging the door open with a kick of his foot. He then pulls a live white rat out of a box and within a second or 2 bites its head off. The animal abuser swallows part of the rat carcass and then drinks 3 shots of vodka. Afterward, one of Mad Matt's assistants punched him in the face with a boxing glove, and the second buddy smashed a chair against Maloney's back. Weirdo style. Apparently, they really thought it was funny. The video got over 250,000 views. However, it also became a major piece of evidence, and the investigators, by means of complex calculations, came to the conclusion that Matt condemned the rat to as much as 29 seconds of suffering and pain. After the arrest, the guardians of the law confiscated 17 rats and a snake from the suspect. According to the investigators, the motive for the massacre of the rodent was Matt's banal desire to become famous, which he certainly did. And the next animal killer built a real multi-million-dollar business off his hobby, which for many years went unnoticed. Vernon Vegas. Vegas was in the business of breeding, selling, and training dogs for fighting. He also trained people who were going to train animals for illegal competitions. The man was part of a large criminal network operating in Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. The group was involved in dog fighting and cocaine trafficking. During the investigation, police seized $570,000 in cash and more than 150 dogs from the criminal network. At the end of his sentence, the man will be under police supervision for another 3 years. Vegas' attorney stated that the convict considers dogfighting an addiction that needs to be treated. After his release, the man plans to help others overcome this disease. Vernon Vegas had been training fighter dogs since 1996. He developed a 7-week program to prepare the animals for underground competitions. For training, Vegas used weighted collars, chains, and sticks. For sparring, he bought ordinary dogs from a kennel and gave them to his fighter dogs to tear apart. We're talking about thousands of animals that were abused or simply killed during combat or training. They charged $150 for admission to their events, and there was no shortage of willing participants. Vernon Vegas was sentenced to 5 years in prison and fined $10,000 for his part in organizing illegal dogfighting events, while doing millions of dollars in this business. David Berry Jr. This is a very weird case and equally weird sentence imposed by the court. A poacher, along with his father and another relative, killed deer and cut off their heads, leaving only the bodies at the scene. The U.S. Department of Conservation pointed out that it was one of the largest such crimes in history. A U.S. court sentenced 29-year-old David Berry Jr. to 1 year and 120 days in prison for killing several hundred deer. Additionally, he will have to re-watch the cartoon Bambi every month. His father, David Berry Sr., and his friend Kyle Berry were also arrested. Both had prior records for illegal fishing. You won't believe this, but they just paid small court fees and served a total of only 33 days in jail. The truth is, Berry Jr. will have to spend a year in jail in Lawrence County and 120 days in a neighboring county where he violated the terms of his felony sentence. And this case is an outright savagery where violence was taught to children as a life lesson in proper behavior. Dewey Brewton. Agriculture teacher Dewey Brewton drowned raccoons in front of his junior high school students. The reason for the execution of the animals was that they'd eaten the chicken that the class was raising, and the teacher decided to teach all the children a lesson that way. As reported by local media, the teacher forbade to film the drowning on pain of being summoned to the principal. It is noted that the raccoons were placed in a trash can filled with water, and only after that taken to the reservoir. The shocking lesson became public knowledge thanks to one of the students, who apparently was stunned and, despite the prohibitions, filmed it on video, which he then showed to his surprised parents. Brewton was suspended and the school launched an investigation into the incident. And the next case is one of the most brutal, when violence was committed by children who believed they were just having a good time. Alina Orlova and Alena Savchenko. It's been so long since we killed. It's driving me nuts. We need to rip someone's guts out. Can we get a dog? These are the lines from the correspondence of two girls from Khabarovsk who became infamous for their atrocities all over the world. Alina Orlova and Alena Savchenko tortured defenseless animals. They filmed it and took selfies against the background of the killed puppies. The gruesome footage became viral on the internet in October 2016. It was impossible to watch without shuddering. Hanged and crucified dogs, a pregnant cat ripped open, internal organs in children's hands covered in blood. The sadists stoned and hammered animals, gouged out their eyes, shot them with air guns, and did many other horrible things. They did all this in abandoned, unfinished buildings. The girls found cats and dogs through classified ads. We will give puppies into good hands. Mostly they took puppies because they were defenseless and couldn't do serious harm. Alina and Alena pretended to be responsible and kind, asking how to take care of the pet. They even sent the previous owners photos of satisfied dogs, without specifying, of course, that the animal had already been killed. The girls kept the shocking content in closed albums in their social networks and in personal correspondence. How this horror leaked into the network is still unknown. According to one version, one of their acquaintances allegedly ordered the girls' pages to be hacked. When he gained access, he was just dumbfounded by what he saw. He saved everything and published it on image boards. The faces of the torturers were hidden in photos and videos, but internet investigators quickly identified the culprits by their tattoos, clothes and shoes. Alina Orlova was sentenced to 3 years and 10 days in a general regime colony. Alena Savchenko was sentenced to 4 years and 3 months in prison. Viktor Smyshlaev was sent to a colony for 3 years. The next case is no less brutal, but the murders were already religiously motivated. Brent Justice. Justice and his 25-year-old girlfriend, Ashley Richards, were arrested back in 2012. The couple had been complained about by animal rights activists from the PETA organization. Justice and Richards published online videos in which the woman used a knife to kill puppies, kittens and chickens. She would then cut off the dead animal limbs. The killings were presented as ritual sacrifices and accompanied by erotic comments. Animal rights activists received a complaint from neighbors who were alarmed by the wild screams and moans coming from the neighboring house. And the couple looked very peculiar, dressed in the best traditions of satanic cults. And the next animal abuser just got angry at his victim, but he didn't expect to be caught on camera by a witness. Terry Wayne. A man was caught on video beating a giant tortoise to death with a hammer, but he claimed he was only doing it in defense of his own life. According to police, the man hit the animal more than 10 times, shattering its shell and crushing its head. Witnesses, one of whom filmed the incident, said that Terry's friend pulled the turtle to shore and began hitting it with a hammer after it got entangled in his fishing line. The turtle simply got in the way of his friend's fishing and ruined the tackle, after which Terry decided to get even with it. Bart Jansen. There are people whose imagination has no bounds. As to how cruel their imagination can be, judge for yourself. In fact, sometimes the line separating the normal from the abnormal is very thin. Bart Jansen from the Netherlands is a living example of just that. This man creates unique drones from stuffed animals of various fauna representatives. It all started back in 2012 when Jansen's cat named Orville was hit by a car. The man's longing for his pet was so intense that he couldn't part with him and decided to make him into a stuffed animal. Okay, everyone has their own quirks, but it wasn't just a regular stuffed animal. Bart made his dead cat into a flying machine. He practically crucified the cat on the chassis of the quadcopter, hiding the electronics inside the carcass. The Sun journalists who interviewed the inventor reported that he simply raised the grief for the pet to a new height. The drone got its own name. In honor of the cat, Jansen called it Orville-copter. But the man didn't stop there and continued to launch other dead animals such as a cow or a rat into the sky. So judge for yourself to what degree this man can be qualified as an animal abuser. But to be honest, his work looks truly horrifying. Crimes against animals can take many forms, and unfortunately, the punishment rarely corresponds to what was done. And if a case doesn't become known to the public, the police may just turn a blind eye to a dead kitty. Stuff happens after all.